It's Mike Brennan, and we're back with another edition of MITech TV. Lots to cover today, starting off with the well-known bon vivant around Lansing, Patrick Anderson, who's going to talk about all you EV owners out there. You're going to have to start paying more for road taxes because, hey, you're not buying gas. What's up with that, Patrick?
What's up with that is exactly one of the reasons why electric vehicle owners like their EVs, and that includes me. I drive an electric vehicle as a daily driver, and one of the attractions is that you don't buy gas, and of course you took that into account. You buy electricity. The problem with that, or a problem with that, is that our roads are funded primarily on taxes levied on gas. And that made a lot of sense for decades because usage of gas is very closely correlated to how much weight and how many miles you put on the road. So it really was about the fairest tax that we had in the state of Michigan and many other states. But now with the advent of EVs, you've got a growing, right now it's a small share, but it's growing, number of vehicles that are driving around paying no federal gas tax, none, and paying no state gas tax. Michigan has one fee for an EV driver, which is basically a flat fee except for quite heavy vehicles. But that doesn't really adjust with use. And as we show in the report that we just issued, it's substantially less than the amount of taxes that we'd be paying for roads by drivers of comparable vehicles.
Yeah.
Okay. So, you've got lots of battery electric vehicles not paying gas tax. What is the fee that they pay instead?
If you're drive an electric vehicle, you like anybody else or a hybrid vehicle, you pay a registration tax. So
Sure.
that's the same whether it's an EV or not. EVs tend to cost more, so they are incrementally a little bit more they tend to pay. But EV fee is $140 for most people. It's incremented, so it'll go up over time. And for people who drive, say, Hummers, it's more than that. But and by Hummers, I mean the really, really big Hummers, the EV Hummers. They can be
Yeah.
9,000 pounds. And the big difference here, as we pointed out, is that typically a driver that is driving a gas car, the number of miles that most Michigan drivers drive are paying $100 or $200 more per vehicle per year, and that really ends up adding up to quite a bit of money if you go over time.
So, in your report, what is your solution then? What would be the way to balance this out? Because obviously we have to repair the roads, particularly in a poor climate situation like we have here in Michigan.
Now, you're right, Mike. And then Michigan, not only do we have weather, that means we have freeze thaw cycles. We put salt on our roads, and that makes it more expensive to keep our roads up here. But our main industries all require roads. So we're talking about our auto industry, particularly with just in time. We're talking about tourism. We're talking about agriculture. All these require roads. So it's critical that we have funding for it. In our report, we're essentially identifying the scale of the problem. We said this is going to be a $500 million problem pretty soon. And if EVs grow faster than we have projected, it would be larger. And there's a whole bunch of potential solutions, which we don't specifically identify, because first we have to identify the problem. And this is actually quite a surprise to a lot of people. They're not aware that EVs aren't paying road taxes in the same way that gas cars are.
Right, and obviously the fee that they pay, the average internal combustion engine vehicle driver in Michigan pays over $400, right, in gasoline tax a year. Is there any way that that we could tag that electric vehicle fee to mileage driven or something like that? I mean, that would seem to require a really big reporting infrastructure.
You're right, Matt, and that's one of the concerns that people have had. There are legitimate privacy concerns about vehicle mile traveled taxes. Toll roads are an idea that people have thought about. For highways, you're going to miss the secondary roads, but you could possibly do it for highways. Some people say, hey, it's way easier because you can put a transponder on it. As someone who occasionally drives the Indiana toll road or takes the Skyway into Chicago, I'm not quite sure easy and inexpensive is what I would apply, but it's easier than stopping every single time. So all
Right, sure.
these are things that people have come up with, and as you said, could be 400. A lot of gas-powered vehicles that are getting lower mileage than the fairly high mileage car we used in that analysis are paying $500 or $600 a year or more. So you are going to have some drivers that are going to be upset as they start to learn that they're paying taxes that people next to them are not.
Yeah. So one of those solutions that's been discussed from time to time, and I don't know how practical it is having a toll road. For instance, 94. A while back, when we had the Secretary of Transportation at an event before the pandemic, I was discussing that with her, and saying, "What do you think of that?" And I'm trying to remember who was governor. I think Governor Snyder was back then, and he was sort of kind of thinking about that. But I mean, you just talked about how having a transponder on there is probably may or may not be the way to go. But are toll roads the way to go? I mean, certain roads anyway.
Toll roads are something that people are familiar with in other states. We don't have toll roads here except for certain bridges, such as the Mackinac Bridge. I haven't heard anybody complain about paying a toll for crossing the Mackinac Bridge. But this is a fundamental decision that our citizens are going to have to face, and there are legitimate privacy concerns. I mean, I have them myself, and I'm sure that's part of the reason we need to talk about it. But for now, what this Anderson Economic Group report does is give us, for the first time, a state-specific, reasonable scenario anticipation year by year of how much money we're going to lose. And as I concluded at the press conference, this isn't sustainable. It's not like, oh, we've got a little problem and next year it'll just be a little problem. No, it's going to be a big problem very quickly. And it's going to be so big, it's not sustainable.
Yeah, what is the percentage of electric vehicle sales now, and where do you see that going, say, between now and 2030?
This is a multi-billion-dollar question, Matt Roush, as you know, and it means a lot of things. I mean, we're right here in Michigan, which I would say is the center of EV adoption. If you look at the huge investments that General Motors and Ford and to a lesser extent Chrysler are making in this, not to mention the enormous taxpayer subsidies that are going into some of these battery plants. So there's a lot of this riding, a lot of money riding on this. How fast will people adopt? Our report, we're suggesting between 15 and 25% of sales by 2030. I think that's a reasonable projection. That's much more than we have now. We're still only at 5.6% in the fourth quarter. So contrary to some of the claims that everybody's buying EVs, no, 1 in 20 people are buying EVs right now. And we think it's entirely reasonable to expect that will double and triple. And our estimates here are based on an assumption of somewhere between 15 and 25%. If this were to be California and we were to take the governor of California seriously, which I'm going to say are two big ifs, Matt and Mike, but if that was the case, we'd have to multiply our estimates by 4 because they have executive orders and rules from their California Air Resources Board out there, basically attending to outlaw internal combustion engines sometime after 2030. So we really have a fairly conservative projection.
Well, then there's GM, which is not going to build ICE vehicles anymore after 2035. Of course, that still means you got the old fleet in there, so probably be 2050 before all the internal combustion engines are out of the fleet, right? So it's just going to get bigger and bigger.
I think General Motors is very serious about getting more EVs on the road, but remember, General Motors made a lot of money in 2022, and they made a lot of money primarily on gas-powered vehicles, and people bought the gas-powered vehicles. And again, we're talking about 94% of buyers were buying gas-powered vehicles last quarter. So I wouldn't be in a rush to declare the internal combustion engine dead. If you'd made that mistake the first time electric vehicles were on the road, you'd have been wrong for 100 straight years, and that's pretty bad. So 100 straight years. I know some politicians that are working on that, but let's say for business people, that would be a very, very bad track record.
Absolutely.
So the concern about privacy in terms of counting the mileage on electric cars, I guess that strikes me as sort of beside the point, mostly because in terms of privacy, we've all got these things that track us. Not only does your phone company track you everywhere you go, all the apps that you have on your phone, most of those track you everywhere you go. So I don't think it would be that hard to add, like I have Ford Pass, on my phone because I own 2 Fords. And, I don't think it would be very hard to add a mileage tracker to Ford Pass for a Mustang Mach-E. I just don't think it'd be that difficult.
I think, Matt, what you're bringing up is a very good point. And those of us who are driving electric vehicles, and again, I'm including myself in there, are now quite used to having multiple apps that we use to identify, locate where chargers are and to pay for them. I'm not sure I want the reliability of some of these charging systems to be what I've got for paying taxes. As we pointed out in our Anderson Economic Group fueling cost studies going back to 2021, the charging system, the electric charging system, is very unreliable compared to what people are used to with gas stations. It just, in my own experience, I mean, the share of times where I go and a charger's blocked or doesn't work is completely unacceptable. But nonetheless, the fact is, the location, as you pointed out, those phones are collecting location data all the time, and people are properly concerned about it, but they are accepting it to some degree. And I wouldn't be surprised if you saw proposals that make use of that, much as you said.
Okay. So the report, now I assume it's going to be at your website if people want to go into more detail on that?
I urge people to go to the Anderson Economic Group website right now and see this impact of electric vehicle adoption on road funding in Michigan. It's right on the AndersonEconomicGroup.com website. It's an excellent report that Tyler Thiel and Christina Benton, 2 of our experts, put together. And it gives you detailed estimates. It identifies exactly how we made these calculations. And it points out, the share of vehicles on the road and lots of other things that you need in order to look at this. I certainly hope that as we go forward, we're going to see more analysis like this because, again, it's a problem right now. It's going to be a very big problem in several years, and we need to start thinking about it now.